either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And today, for the title fight, we have the hungover ape versus the lizard that doesn't know where he's going anymore.
Yeah, this is the downhill decline of Godzilla, our man.
Yeah, a bit.
So we're gonna talk about King Kong versus Godzilla,
Yes.
the 1962 one.
Yeah, we had originally planned to do this a little closer to when the actual the remake of King Kong versus Godzilla was going to be coming out, but with scheduling and everything,
the world's
theaters,
still on fire.
Yeah, things getting pushed back. We just figured we'd go for it and have fun with it.
And let's be clear. We are fully aware that we skipped the second Godzilla movie, a classic, a good movie, and the first King Kong movie, a classic, one of the masterpieces of cinematography, and skipped right to King Kong vs. Godzilla, a piece of trash. A beautiful, wonderful piece of garbage.
Okay. King Kong or Godzilla Raids Again isn't super great either.
No, but it is slightly better than this one.
Yeah.
I say that because this is the point in Godzilla history franchise where they thought to themselves, what if kids also liked Godzilla?
Yeah, this was the start of them being Godzilla specifically being marketed towards children.
But at the same time, this movie hasn't leaned full in.
No.
Because some of the Godzilla movies that are for kids where he's the hero, those are fun and they know they're a kid's movie and it's what it is.
Yeah.
This one wanted to be serious like its predecessors, but we've got a monkey.
Yeah.
We've got,
It just missed its mark.
It was trying to be a lot of things all at the same time.
Yeah. And to specify a little bit more, we didn't realize that there were two cuts of the movie until about 2 weeks before.
Yes.
Something like that. And so specifically, we're going to focus on the original 1962 Godzilla remake, or 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla Japanese original cut, and not the American cut, because, let's be honest, the Japanese one is a superior film.
Oh, it is by far, and we'll get more into that as we go.
Yes. And before we get into anything, Chris,
yes.
What are we drinking today?
Well, King Kong in this movie famously is addicted to a weird berry juice on a foreign island that makes him tired and sleepy. And so we found a weird berry juice that makes us tired and sleepy.
Arbor Mist. Tropical fruits. We'll see.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's very fruity.
Yes. So, also, before I get into it, I do want to acknowledge my main source for a lot of the background information is Godzilla FAQ by Brian Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
Use it for a review of Godzilla.
Yep.
Don't necessarily recommend going back to that review because it was our second episode and it's a bit rough.
It's a little rough. Good movie, though. I recommend you watch it.
Yeah, we just kind of talked around the movie before we knew what we were doing, so... So I use that, our beloved Wikipedia.
Dear beloved Wikipedia. I also watched a documentary called The Rise and Fall of Godzilla. If you can get a hold of it. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of put what led up to King Kong versus Godzilla, I kind of want to get into where the status of King Kong and Godzilla at the time.
Yes.
As we previously mentioned, King Kong's first film was the 1993 self-titled film.
Yes.
And Godzilla's first film was 1954.
Now, I kind of want to put a real quick pin in the King Kong film.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people who aren't into movies, the King Kong film looks odd from all the stills you've seen, and probably the short clips you've seen. With that said, I did rewatch it. I'd seen it way back in the day.
Yeah.
I did rewatch it. It's actually really good. If you saw it as a kid or something because it was King Kong, I recommend rewatching it as an adult. There's a reason why a lot of people claim it's the eighth wonder of the cinematography world. It really is amazing, especially as an adult, knowing the amount of work that went into it.
Oh, yeah.
And the behind the stories bits of it. However, that King Kong doesn't translate all the way to here.
No, and that's
but he was really popular because of that movie.
Yes, and I'll go into that in a little bit. That film was the iconic film for stop motion animation.
I would argue still up there.
I actually watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago as well, because I felt if I've seen the first Godzilla film, I at least need to see the first King Kong film.
Fair.
And it still definitely holds up. Like, it's
good story, it's got good writing, the dialogue, the acting, and the stop motion's still decent.
Yeah, it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And this is actually, as you mentioned earlier, it's the third movie Godzilla was in.
Yes, this is the third Godzilla film, not King Kong film, really.
This is actually also the third King Kong film.
King Kong Jr.
Son of Kong, and then this is their third. But this was the first King Kong film following a 29-year hiatus after Son of Kong in 1933, as well as, if you don't include the now lost 1938 King Kong appears in Edo, which...
we can't, because no one can watch it.
No, and it was a ripoff anyways. And this was the first Godzilla film in 7 years following Godzilla Raids Again, which actually ties into this movie.
Yes, it does.
Now, I actually went down a little bit of a rabbit hole that's maybe a little off topic, but I still find it interesting since we've talked a little bit about like the history of kaiju films before and their influences. And I knew King Kong was a classic creature feature, but I was kind of curious where this genre of film originated.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I did find it was mainly in horror and sci-fi movies.
Of course.
And the origin, I knew King Kong was old, but I didn't know like how much older it went. One of the earliest feature films that was considered a monster movie was the 1915 silent German Empire film, The Golem.
Yeah.
Also known as Der Golem.
Yes.
Which, unfortunately, the 1915 version is actually a partially lost film.
Yeah.
And its sequel is completely lost, which I'm a little sad because I learned The Golem and The Dancing Girl is one of the early examples of a spoof horror film.
Oh, well,
Yeah. You think spoof horror film or spoof movies to be a newer thing.
But I guess it does make sense. I mean, people have always laughed at things that frighten them. Might as well make something goofy out of it.
And another couple notable films from that era, not necessarily, well, one of them is a horror film, but the other one is more of a folktale. There's Nosferatu.
Of course, a classic.
And Die Nibelungen, Fritz Lang's epic film.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With the dragon and...
Yeah.
Both from the Weimar Republic.
Not gonna lie, if you haven't seen them, it's not for everyone, but they are a good watch if you have nothing better to do.
Mm-hmm. And so, from that, in America, monster movies weren't very successful until the 30s.
Yeah.
With works such as Dracula and Frankenstein that were influenced by German Expressionism, which was developed during the Weimar era of Germany, which at a later date we'll get into what all that is.
And they're also... So, creature features and then kind of the big screen drive-in horror movie theme, we definitely needed to, as a culture, be in a place to enjoy that. Like, there is an atmosphere required to really get into these movies, and by the time this movie came around, we were full into that.
Yeah. Well, even more so because Godzilla had created that resurgence.
Exactly.
But also, the very first monster film to extensively use stop animation was The Lost World of 1925, which the special effects animator was Willis O'Brien, who would later go on to landmark films such as King Kong.
Yeah.
And actually plays a little bit of a crucial role in bringing these two cultural titans together.
And he's also one of the reasons why a lot of these older special effects style shows, especially if you end up binging them like we do, you can start to see repetition in some of the stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just because these guys were making it up as they went.
Yeah.
They were inventing the book as they were writing it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they all kind of tie together nicely, which helped also with this genre, because then people kind of had something familiar to go see,
Mm-hmm.
which, as we've learned, you can introduce something new in the cinema world, and yeah, you might get lucky every once in a while with something being popular, but your real goal is to bring people something they know they like. Yeah,
or you're just trying to have fun with it and you accidentally create something that's phenomenal. Like, any of those So Bad It's Good horror films that we watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, those are primo examples of that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, the King Kong vs. Godzilla was heavily relying on the idea that people knew both of these characters already. They remembered them. They remembered liking them. Now they're both going to be on the same screen. We see this gimmick to this day.
Yeah. With all the sci-fi...
every mashup ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, how... It's an interesting story to find out how these two actually came together.
Yeah, because... honestly, like, especially now, it seems like a really obvious pairing, but King Kong vs. Godzilla was not the original rendition of this movie.
No, not at all. The original concept was, like I mentioned earlier, Willis O'Brien is going to play another part in this, created by him, and he originally wanted to create he had a new idea around 1960, and he had fully realized it, calling it King Kong meets Frankenstein.
Yeah, but he was going to reimagine Frankenstein.
Yes.
So not human Frankenstein, but animal part Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So bigger, so he could fight Kong.
Exactly.
And honestly, the concept art is still floating around on the internet if you want to look at it. And I kind of want that. Like, I kind of want that movie.
Yeah, I mean...
the concept art looks really cool. It's got kind of a circus stage vibe during some of the, like, images of it.
It kind of makes me think of a golem.
Yeah, and it does. It's got that gray, fleshy death thing
amalgamation of body parts.
Yeah, and because it's not human, it's a lot harder for you to pick out what bits are. Which I kind of liked. I've never really jived with the modern version of Frankenstein. I like him. I like him as a character. But when you sit down and rationally think through him, he doesn't make a whole lot of sense. At least our current super tall, square-headed...
Well...
But there's a reason for that, too.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I'm still getting caught up on some of these classic old films. The only movie I've seen that I can remember with original Frankenstein style was The Spirit of the Beehive.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Completely different movie.
Completely different movie. I will say I do like the old, Hollywood Studios style monster movies. They're kind of my bread and butter. Mostly because I got introduced to them via the, like, haunt nights at Universal Studios. They still lean pretty heavy on their old horror film characters. Not necessarily the movies themselves, but, like, Frankenstein still makes an appearance at their haunts. Oh, and so does Bride of Frankenstein and all those sort of characters.
Is it like what Kansas City theme park?
Yeah.
They kind of have their Fright Nights?
Yeah, but think like...
Big budget.
Big budget, like, this will be their first year where they don't truly have a haunt ever. I think this is like 30-something plus years of running. And so, like, they've always leaned heavy on those characters. So I would see them, like, friends I know would get shirts with them because we were a bunch of Halloween nerds. And that's what we wanted to do on our vacation was go to Florida and do the haunt houses. So it's always like, Frankenstein has always interested me. And seeing a complete rebranding of Frankenstein like that, at first I was like, oh, okay, I see where they were going. And then they just, and in my head I was like, oh, well, they were going to go with that. And like, yeah, Kong kind of morphs into it. No.
No.
So
it was going to be something completely different.
Yeah, it was going to be arguably really cool.
Yeah.
But we got something else that's pretty cool too.
Exactly. And so O'Brien went to RKO Pictures, the production company that had originally done the first King Kong movie.
Yep.
He brought them a full treatment and production sketches, which is where the concept art you were talking about comes from.
Yeah, you can still see them. They're really cool.
And RKO Pictures at the time liked the idea, but there were issues with making the film.
As always.
First off, RKO at the time was no longer a film producer.
Yeah.
They had left their glory days and they were more a distribution house now. And at the same time, they also believed that Universal had the rights to Frankenstein's name They did not. They only had the right to Jack Pierce's makeup, the really square face.
Which is kind of the iconic Frankenstein look, which kind of makes me laugh because we've seen other Frankensteins out there, but they've all morphed into this Frankenstein.
Yeah, and at this time, Frankenstein was in the public domain.
Yeah, but if you don't know that, then you don't know to battle it legally.
Yep, exactly.
Which sucks, because he brought this forward with some pretty cool ideas. I mean, Kong was kind of his idea. Which
Universal owns the American distribution of King Kong vs. Godzilla.
And it shows.
Yeah. As well, the project name was changed from King Kong Meets Frankenstein to King Kong vs. the Ginkgo.
Yes.
To avoid any copyright issues.
Yeah, and I mean, it still would have worked, like, even if it had not been the traditional Frankenstein, if it was this animal one. But instead, they did some backhanded shit.
Yes. Enter a man named John Beck.
Who accidentally gets painted to be a real asshole in history.
I wouldn't say accidental. He is.
I mean, he did this on purpose. Yeah, no, he totally did this on purpose.
Yeah, so at this point, O'Brien was put in contact with John Beck, who brought in the son of Republic Pictures founder George Worthing Yates to write the screenplay for it.
Yep, like you do.
Yates was previously a serial writer or sci-fi films.
Yeah, I mean, they would fit.
His works including It Came From Beneath the Sea.
I like that one.
Earth vs. the Flying Sausage.
I have not seen that one.
The Amazing Colossal Man.
Not all of it.
And the only one I have seen, Earth vs. the Spider.
That one's good. I like that one.
It's bad.
Yeah, of course it's bad.
I know. And
it's a zoomed up picture of a spider most of the movie.
And you love bad movies.
Oh, I love it. Okay. It gives me a drive-in movie sense, and I love it.
So that's the other thing, too, is most these monster movies in the U.S. were larger versions of animals because it was easy to film and superimpose. That's why we had, like, Earth vs. the Spider or Gila Monster. Ants,
snakes, termites.
Yeah.
You name it. We just made it larger.
Exactly. And so I think that's part of the reason why, like, Godzilla took off so well, because it felt unique.
It felt new.
Yeah. And so, Yates, took the screenplay and, actually kind of went back to the Frankenstein idea, renaming the project King Kong versus Prometheus.
Which, if you've read the book, makes sense, but if you haven't read the book, ignore that title.
Yeah.
King Kong versus Frankenstein.
Yeah, and so at this point as well, Beck began cutting O'Brien out of the process.
Like that terrible ex you had in high school.
Yep, and eventually cut him out altogether.
Out of his own project.
Yeah, which is kind of sad, but...
Little douchey.
Yeah, and so Beck began slinging the script around to various Hollywood studios.
Kind of hoping anybody would bite it, really.
Exactly, at this point. Because people wanted to do King Kong again, but they all wanted to they wanted to keep it stop animation, and they were rejecting it because of the high cost.
Yes. Stop animation, to this day, is very expensive to do.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really time-intensive to do, and the first one set such a precedence that, like, even if you wanted to, like, make a worse version, it still wouldn't be...
Yeah.
Like, the bar was already so high.
Oh, yeah. And so, enters Toho.
Oh, our beloved Toho.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen many works from them.
Oh, yeah. And so, upon receiving the screenplay, they took a chance with the film because now they actually had an opportunity to get the rights to King Kong from RKO now that they were connected to Beck.
Yeah.
And they had been wanting to make a King Kong film for a long time at this point.
And honestly, from their perspective, this sounds really great. Like, we know King Kong, we wanted to work with King Kong, and we have a giant monster he could fight already.
Mm-hmm. Well, also at this time, Toho had completely rejected using any stop animation.
Yeah.
And in favor of their now classic suitmation.
Yeah, which we've seen Godzilla and suitmation work in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it work in the future, too. And arguably, the suit for Godzilla in this movie isn't a bad suit. There's a couple parts where the acting in the suit is arguable.
Yeah.
Clapping is my first thought. There's a lot of clapping.
There's more to that later on.
But not as much attention and detail was put into the Kong suit as the Godzilla suit. Mostly because they already had worked out a lot of the kinks for the Godzilla suit in the previous 2 films. So they knew kind of what they were wanting and what they were going for and how mechanically to make it work.
Yes. And
they just kind of were hoping to transfer those same mechanics onto Kong.
Yeah, and I think part of it ties into their experience with monster films at the time because... Sure.
If you've never done it before.
Yeah, because between the original Godzilla and the the original Godzilla and King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yes.
They'd already done 5 kaiju films, including Godzilla Raids Again, Rodan, the Mysterians, Varan, and the 3 Treasures, and Mothra.
Yes.
All very reptilian, minus Mothra. Mothra was their first fluffy and cute one.
And we've talked about the giant version of Mothra and how it's just a Beanie Baby.
Yeah.
It's just a Beanie Baby on strings.
And so I think that ties into some of their lack of experience with that.
No, and like we said, like, we joke about this, but honestly, no shame, because no one had done a giant monkey.
Yeah.
Yet. At least as far as a suit goes.
Yeah, exactly.
And specifically, a King Kong shaped and sized monkey. Because arguably, King Kong isn't a human shaped monkey. He's gorilla-esque, which their proportions are way off than a dude in a suit.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes it hard. And so there's obviously going to be problems with it on top of having to be actually in a suit and wrestle.
I will say, I started rewatching 2001: A Space Odyssey last night.
Yes. And
the ape costumes in that are pretty good.
We learned a lot in the past.
Oh, yeah.
We just, at this point, we weren't ready. And, like, you can even see it later on. I think, like, a really good example of good ape costumes are, the Planet of the Ape costumes. Those are ape costumes on real people.
Yeah. They
turned out great. They're very convincing. They're very believable. But they wouldn't have known to do any of that if Kong hadn't fucked it up first.
Well, here's the thing.
Because there's some principles that are the same. Like, his mouth moves. He's got the full fur cover. It's just...
I still debate that because, the movies are only 6 years apart.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time.
No, but I would argue, especially in the special effects world, the learning curve is real fast and real steep. We know this from trying to build shit in architecture studios.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you learn things within minutes, and sometimes something's not quite how you want it to be, but at this point you just gotta keep going with it.
Yeah, I am very much the conceptual designer. I cannot do models to save my life. I don't have the patience for it.
And every model you make, no matter what type of model you're building, whether that's something you're sewing, something you're making for a movie, or something for your school project, every single iteration, every single time you pick up the glue gun, you learn something new about what you just did. And so, 6 years for film is a very short time. I think for costuming, that's a very long time. And that's why we see such a huge jump in just people in suit costumes in general.
Yeah, sorry, side little tangent. Maybe it relates to this movie a little bit. I had cut out part of my model, and it was like the weekend before everything was due.
Oh, no.
And my professor came by. He looks down at the desk. That's not happening. And then walks off.
Yeah, that is a very accurate portrayal of trying to build things in real life.
It happened. Deadline. It got done.
They always do. It's just whether or not it was a good life choice.
In the middle of my final presentation, I put the mouse down on the model, and it collapsed even further.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah. But, so back to King Kong versus Godzilla. This is how big of an opportunity this was. Eiji Tsuburaya, who was the head of the special effects for Toho, shelved everything he was working on to focus on this project.
They were really excited about this project.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ishiro Honda, the original Godzilla director, was brought back, and he had more experience now because not only had he done Godzilla, he had done Rodan, Mysterians, Varan, which, by the way, the Amazon version of Varan's is garbage.
Yeah.
And also Mothra.
And honestly, you can tell with the directing style in King Kong vs. Godzilla. There are framing and shots that we've definitely seen versions of that have been refined for this movie. Like, there's definitely some writing that's been rethought out and redone. There's some more detail put on some of the human characters that I really liked. Like, a lot of work did go into this film, despite the crap we're about to give it.
Yes. And remember back to our last talk on Godzilla, that they basically had two directors on the film.
Yeah.
Tsuburaya focused on the special effects scenes and the suit scenes, and Honda worked on the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And also, Shinichi Sekizawa was brought in to rewrite the screenplay, and he originally wrote it as a parody movie.
Fair. Fair.
Yes, and it does show.
Yeah, there are definitely points where that comes blazing through.
And I think this was his first Godzilla movie.
Okay. You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah. And so there was kind of a little bit of a rift, not major. There was disagreements because Honda didn't like the comedic tone and preferred the more serious horror themes of the original Godzilla.
Yes, which you can see in some shots and some lighting setups. There are definitely essences of that in the film, but then there's other parts that feel much more lighthearted. Exactly.
But unfortunately, he got ruled out because Tsuburaya liked the comedic tone.
Yeah.
And he was the one who wanted his films to be more geared towards children.
Yeah. Which I'm not saying was a bad choice, because clearly it wasn't. It clearly led to a long, well-loved franchise of Godzilla. It's just, this is the awkward growing child.
Yeah, and we actually see more of the comedic, childish tone, or childish approaches to the movies in the rest of the Showa series, which I spent my staycation watching 14 of the 15 because I didn't want to rewatch the original Godzilla because we did it so much last year.
That's fair.
But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the worst of the offenders is All Monsters Attack, which Manila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what were the calls that were made for this movie a bad one? I don't think they were. I just think that there was a lot happening in this one. And unfortunately, it had to be a little bit of the sacrifice movie to get the other ones to end up being good.
Oh yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the episode, especially with the legacy this movie's created.
Oh, for sure.
A couple other little things. Some of the actors from previous Godzilla films and would-be mainstays in the Godzilla franchise came back.
Yep, happy to see them.
Unfortunately, Takashi Shimura did not make a comeback in this one. He is in Godzilla Raids again,
which
very minor role that time. Probably the most notable for Americans was the character Fumiko, played by Mei Hama. She would later portray the Bond chick Kissy Suzuki in You Only Live Twice.
I love He Only Lived Twice.
I will save my thoughts on Bond for another episode.
Yes, agree.
I have many things to say.
You binged them all, though, in a sense. You watched them all sequentially.
Yeah.
Which is arguably not the way to watch Bond.
No, not at all.
Once a decade's plenty.
All right. So now that we've kind of talked about what led up to them being able to make the movie, I think Toho spent like $20,000 to get the rights.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so now Toho had the full go-ahead.
He was going to make this movie.
King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yep.
And like I mentioned earlier, we will be focusing mainly on the Japanese cut of the film because the American version is heavily edited and censored, as the two previous ones were before.
Yeah, arguably, though, this one is the worst offender, I think, of the American editing, only because at least the previous edits tried.
Yeah.
Arguably not a lot of try, but there was more try than this version.
Because there was more of the common theme and tone of nuclear radiation in the first one, whereas almost everything about the criticism of the news and media in this one was kind of cut or extremely toned down.
And there was a huge, the Americanized version spent a lot of time and effort attempting to portray the entire world, and specifically the western part of the world, as a good guy hero who was trying to send help to this poor, unfortunate country.
Yeah.
Which is not even a part of the original narrative. Like, that's not even here.
Yeah.
They made that up.
I'll go over some of the other key differences if you're trying to decide which one to watch.
Yeah.
The news and television segments are from the UN and a news correspondent giving pseudo-documentary touch, which to me wasn't unlike the original American cut of Godzilla.
I did not hate the news part intro, and I do think that they could have used it to help bridge some of the translation gap. Because there's always translation gap when you're trying to either dub or sub a movie. Especially for an audience who at the time, while we're more adapt to the changes in having a movie brought over than the original Godzilla, it's still a very long process and something that we're still not great at. I still see brand new movies that get brought over from either Korea or Japan or even Germany where you know that that's not what the translation says.
Oh, yeah.
But there's not a good way to do it in the same amount of time that the actor's talking.
Yeah, and you have to deal with dubbing, which that's a big thing in this one. The dubbing's not very good either.
No, but arguably it's passable. I would say it's fine.
There's parts where it matches up fine.
Yeah, it's good enough for an old movie. Arguably it's good enough for some of the new movies.
Yeah.
I think the newscasting portion had potential to help bridge that understanding gap, but instead they just kind of added more confusion because instead of helping understand the plot of the original Godzilla versus King Kong, they just kind of try to put their own narrative in.
Yeah.
Not necessary.
Yeah. Also in the Japanese cut, there's a lesser emphasis on Mr. Tako and his drive to get better television ratings.
Yeah.
There's also less of a relationship build up between Fumiko and Fujita.
Yeah, which again,
one of those
it was
characters
added,
we can't pronounce well in English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another small change, which for some people you will not notice, and then for other people like me and my husband was a huge letdown. The music was changed in the American version. Yeah. And by changed, I mean completely changed. It's a completely different score.
Yeah, they completely removed Akira Ifukube.
I'm very sorry. I'm trying to learn Japanese pronunciations. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, he was the original composer for Godzilla, and they completely got rid of his orchestral soundtrack in favor of stock music.
Which makes no sense to me. But like I said, for some people, like, because I've had friends watch this movie to have them tell me what they think.
Yeah.
And like my friend in Kansas City watched it. She did not notice that the music was different. That wasn't something that stood out to her. Once I pointed it out to her, she noticed. But to Brian and I, who had watched the Japanese version first, and we also had recently-ish watched the first Godzilla, which he had harped a lot about the music on that one, it was kind of jarring.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a personal thing, I think, but for me, it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And if you really want some more breakdown of all the differences,
there's a lot.
I highly recommend going to moviecensorship.com.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Fantastic job, like breaking down
everything,
minute by minute.
Because we've gone over the big points. This movie was edited to hell.
Yes.
At least for the American version. So, yeah, like, they're close to being the same movie, but they're arguably not.
Yeah. And so, now diving into the movie itself.
Yes.
I actually really like the start of the Japanese one because it starts off boring as all hell with an educational show.
I like it.
And Mr. Tako gets or Tako.
I like Taco.
Taco? Okay, Mr. Tako.
Because it's like octopus.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He is pissed off because they're not getting the ratings they want. He gets a call from the president of the company saying, hey, we need better ratings.
Honestly, it kind of feels like a 70s sitcom sort of moment.
Yeah. No, well, and I think that's part of the charm of the original cut in its commentary because this character, Mr. Tako, is very comedic and over the top.
Yes.
And his role was heavily played down in the American cut.
Honestly, it was hard to know that he was supposed to be a comedic character in the American cut because he's almost normal compared to some of the other characters in the way they edit it. But yeah, the Japanese one, arguably he helps kind of lead the way into this movie being something more comedic than its predecessors, which was nice because then it wasn't so jarring when we got to the real comedic parts.
Yeah. And at this time, he's chewing out his subordinates.
Like you do.
He goes to a meeting with with one of their scientists, because it's Pacific Pharmaceuticals is who this TV station works for. Which
sounds weird now, because we've done a good job of hiding all of this in modern times. Like, it might still be happening, but it's under a big umbrella name that you don't know about.
Yeah. Camel cigarettes. Yeah. Good for your lungs.
Which, Camel's a good one that sticks around. There's a bunch of wine companies in America that also did this, but this wasn't uncommon. Like, this wasn't just a Japanese thing. Everybody and their mom was sponsored by somebody.
It was just the TV of the time.
Yeah, like, there wasn't commercials in the same sense. Like, you didn't have commercials halfway through your stuff. You were sponsored by the company who wanted the commercial.
Yeah, it's like sponsorship videos on YouTube now.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good comparison.
And so he's meeting with this scientist who's returned studying these narcotic berries
that are clearly not tomatoes in a jar.
Nope. But they produce a narcotic effect.
A non-habit forming. The American version spends a little bit too much time emphasizing that it's non-habit forming.
A little bit. And they've been discovered on Faroe Island, and and Mr. Taco believes that he can boost popularity or get the ratings they want by bringing this, not only televising going to the island,
like a jungle exploration,
potentially bringing back this mysterious creature or evil spirit as a publicity stunt and as a mascot.
Real quick side note, we are aware that the Faroe Islands are a real island. This one's spelled differently. I don't think they knew about the actual real life ones.
I'll get into that in a little bit. So at this point, he sends off his two coworkers, Osamu Sakurai and Kinsamburo Fure.
Yes, I will say the American pronunciation of Sakurai was terrible.
Oh, ours are probably not that great either.
We're pronouncing it pretty much the same way that the, like, American version did, which was hilarious because they, like, sandwiched it between very, like, appropriately Japanese sounding names, and then Sakurai many a times just turned into Sakurai, which was I love it.
Golden moment.
Golden dub moment.
Okay. And so at this time, we're also introduced to Fumiko.
Yes. Who I liked in this.
I did too.
I liked Fumiko. She was fun.
And we're introduced to her. Her brother is Osama. Mm-hmm. And she's in love with a man named Masai Shinzo. They're engaged.
Yes. There's
a weird, cheesy scene, which makes more sense in the original Japanese cut.
Yes.
But not for the American cut at all.
No, it feels very strange in the American cut.
Yeah, because there's a part they're eating dinner, and there's a clear rivalry for her attention.
It, like, little kid level rivalry for her attention.
Why is your boyfriend's steak bigger than mine?
And she just dodges that question like a champ.
And they're both going off on expeditions.
Please note that her boyfriend, fiance man, is also the inventor of this magic wire.
Yeah.
That is super strong. And
that's what I was going to get to. It's like our modern concept of, like, spider silk wire.
Yeah, it's very much the exact same stuff as Spider-Man has, minus the sticky aspect.
Which he proceeds to hang himself off of a balcony.
I did like the amount of, like, the brother is spending a good deal of time being like, no, don't do it, stop, because he's trying to prove the strength and elasticity of this, like, literal thread-thin wire. So he's hanging himself off the balcony with it. He's bouncing around, he's being a dork. And the brothers be like, no, don't, but I'm also not going to get any closer to help save you. Like,
never.
If you fall, oh no.
Own fault.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so Sakurai and Fure are sent off on their expedition in a very stereotypical British explorer outfit.
I love this sort of, like, campy theme in movies where it's like you've got the hard hat-esque hat, it's tan, everyone's wearing shorts that are not appropriate to be stomping around in a jungle in. Mm-hmm. No one's prepared properly, no one's packed properly, or they're completely overpacked with no, like, real sense. I love that feel. And so I kind of liked this initial part of the island intro, because it did feel like the older exploration jungle-esque movies.
And that I like it too, because it ties into the spectacle.
Yes.
That the Pacific Pharmaceuticals is trying to promote.
Exactly.
And so also at this time, we're introduced to America's, the UN's involvement into it, because they are in this movie.
Yeah, even the not American version.
Yeah, and so at this time, there is a nuclear sub that's found a underwater current, a warm underwater current in the Arctic, and it leads them to a glowing iceberg. And
like dumbasses, they want to go touch it.
Yes, which, by the way, there are so many old people on the submarine.
Yes, there are. There's a lot of elderly people on the submarine. But honestly, like, unless you've watched this movie a couple times back to back, or you're looking specifically at the background characters, it's a submarine scene, so you spend all your time looking at the one guy who's talking. Yeah. So...
And at this time also, the submarine gets caught in an iceberg. Which
feels like we just talked about that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh no!
For about 4 hours.
We've hit another iceberg.
But for those who aren't aware at this point, who haven't seen Godzilla Raids Again,
yes,
this is where Godzilla's been trapped since presumably since that movie.
Yes. Honestly, the Japanese version does kind of a nice job of like tying you in real quick with that knowledge.
Yes.
So you don't really need to see that movie if you need to skip it for some reason.
Exactly. And so we hear Godzilla screeching. And on top of that, so the other thing, it's also a nuclear submarine.
Yes, it is, which we know how that goes.
And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Which I was going to bring up, but when I said it at home, Brian was like, I don't know, that one seems different. No. I get 20 League Fathoms throughout kind of this whole movie, all the way up until the actual wrestling part.
Yeah, it's a very close... There's a lot of...
Feels.
Homages.
It's got a lot of vibes, as the children say.
And so, also at this time, we cut to Faroe Island, where Sakurai and Furei have arrived and are welcomed by the natives. Or first, terrified by the natives.
They are, which is fair because, I mean, they are holding sharp, pointy sticks to them.
I will say, key difference between the Japanese and the American cut, Furei, he is... a completely different character.
Yeah.
He still is comedic in the Japanese one, but not as much.
He's almost uselessly obnoxious in the American cut. Like, to the point where you're about to, like, punt him off the island.
Because he's always complaining about his corns.
Yeah, like, and, like, I guess they were trying to, like, come up with something that American audiences would know that he's complaining about, but, like, honestly, like, it really doesn't translate super well. Not even like a Japanese to American, just like American to American.
Yeah, and in the Japanese one, he's complaining, he's afraid he'll become barbecue.
Which makes so much more sense.
Exactly.
Like, don't get me wrong, dude. You can have corns and be sad about your feet all day, but like, why are you bringing it up now?
Yes. One thing I do want to bring up about this part of the movie, we had a little talk about it when we watched this together.
Yeah.
The Islanders in this movie.
Yeah, so, old-timey disclaimer note real quick. This movie is a product of its time, and we're aware of that. We're not saying that this is the right way to do this scene, we're just saying this is how they did it.
Yes. They're blackface.
Yeah, I mean, they're Japanese actors trying to portray what seems to be something like a Polynesian race, but not even based off of anyone real. It's very much the standard, like, cannibal tribe vibe without being cannibals.
So, because of that, I did some digging on it, and I can 100% confirm it is blackface.
Okay.
I first started off by looking up where Skull Island was, just seeing, okay, maybe it's off of this island.
Sure.
And also rewatching the original King Kong film where the natives are played by black people. Skull Island is located off the coast of Piriku, Indonesia. which is west of the Solomon Islands, where Faroe Island is located.
Yes.
And after looking at what the natives of the region look like, and
what historically they could have taken inspiration from if they had wanted to.
Yeah, it's straight up blackface.
Oh, hi.
I will say I did discover something interesting about this group of people on the Solomon Islands.
Mm-hmm.
They have very dark skin, but they have a naturally native blonde hair as well.
Oh, fancy.
It is a stunning look.
I imagine so. That is not portrayed in this movie, unfortunately.
No, not at all. And they win them over by producing the music box.
It's, okay, if you go into this movie with that old-timey nostalgia, understanding that is not a necessarily appropriate thing anymore, but, going with the theme that was the time period, it is a quirky scene.
And on top of that, it's not like it's a 1960s American movie. It's a 1960s Japanese movie.
So, every country has their own growth timeline, and that they don't always line up.
No.
So, we're not saying that this is, the best way to do things by any stretch of the imagination. This is just how that it was done. And so, if we're going to put that aside for now to look at the actual writing of the script and the movie itself, the magic boombox is a trope we've seen lots of times before. Usually also in the same trope as the arguably questionable native people. Looking at you, Tarzan films.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a new concept for the time period. This was something people were used to seeing and people expected to see.
Yeah.
So at the time, unfortunately, no one really was going to argue too loudly against this.
No, not at all.
Nowadays, it is a little jarring to watch, not gonna lie. There could have been a different way to go about it.
Yeah, because I honestly had forgotten about that scene until they showed up, and it's like, oh.
And it's kind of awkward because, at least in the American cut, there's a couple of scenes where they spend a lot of time interested in the native people who aren't really given names or even real dialogue. And it's just kind of like a look at them sort of feel.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels weird nowadays, and that's why we were kind of looking forward to the new King Kong versus Godzilla film, because even if they went a completely different route, King Kong is still on the island. We've already seen that from the new King Kong movies. So, we could have gone somewhere with this. We could have, had a new vibe and new perspective, but alas, we are won over with cigarettes and the magic of radio.
Yep. And so, at this time, now that they've won them over, it cuts to the helicopter crew trying to figure out what happened to the submarine because they lost connection with them in a nearby base.
Yes.
And while they're circling where they found the yellow fluid floating in the water.
Definitely not uranium or anything.
Nope. Godzilla escapes from the iceberg.
In a kind of cool scene.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's a little bit like a toy busting out of a snow cone, but I like it.
Oh, yeah. No, the suits are what they had at the time.
And, it was a creatively shot scene. It does feel like you're getting a helicopter's perspective, which, isn't really what's happening, but you get the same feeling, you can see where this was going.
It's a nice touch.
It was a good effort.
And so Godzilla starts his march to Japan as we cut back to Faroe Island, where Sakurai and Furue are exploring, trying to find... That's the other thing.
Yes.
King Kong is referred to as an evil spirit.
Yes.
And so part of the reason these natives make this juice is to appease the evil spirit.
In the American version, they keep calling King Kong their god,
mm-hmm.
but the way it's said and implied, it kind of gives the same vibe, so I see where they were going with it. I also kind of liked the concept of this group of people who spend all day, every day making wine for an angry god.
Hey.
That doesn't feel very practical, but you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
Pre-hipsters.
Pre-hipsters.
And so this scene is really cheesy as well because...
Oh, it's so cheesy.
There's roaring, there's...
crashes and banging.
There's a giant lizard that Furue swings around his head and throws off a cliff.
Which may or may not have been something that kind of resembles an iguana.
And then Sakurai proceeds to shoot it.
I don't know why. We've already chucked it.
Yeah.
Feels like we've done our job, but just in case, I guess.
Yeah, I have no clue.
I think it was supposed to give the illusion that they're really worked up and kind of nervous on the island, but it didn't quite work the same way that I think they were kind of hoping it would. It just kind of came off cheesy, especially since the scene before that was kind of a comedic scene. So,
Yeah. And they hear roaring in the distance, but they don't get close to it, and they have to return back to the village.
Yes.
And while they're at the village, an octopus comes and attacks.
This is the worst part of the whole movie. Like, it's so... Okay, so disclaimer in case you are upset by squishy things. It is a real octopus that they used. It's meant to look gigantic, so it's the same technique we'd seen before with, like, Rise of the Ants and, you know, the spiders attack and all that sort of stuff. So it's a giant octopus. It's attacking what they're storing King Kong's magic wine juice in.
It's just attacking the village.
It's attacking in general. It's coming out to get you. It is straight up just an octopus that they have put on land and are pushing it across the set. It does not look like a happy octopus. And, disclaimer, the octopus in real life was eaten by the crew.
Subaraya.
Yeah.
Subaraya said he brought it home and ate it for dinner.
Yeah, so, you know, this was kind of before the whole animals are actors too, please don't eat them. No, this one was very much consumed, and it spends a lot of time being uncomfortable.
Yeah, just crawling on land.
And, like, octopuses are scary in water. And they are gross out of land, but they are not scary out of land. They are just kind of meh.
Yeah.
They look slimy, they act floppy. I don't like them. I don't like it. So yeah, he slooshes around the village and
crushing some buildings.
People are screaming.
And who should appear?
But the terrifying demon himself.
King Kong!
He's got to fight the nasty, slimy, which is now turning a weird shade of white because it's...
covered in cellophane.
Covered in cellophane for shits and giggles. Yep. Really.
And so, let's talk about, the King Kong costume a little bit.
Okay, so I can see where they were going. Because there are certain angles and shots where you're like, oh, they were trying to do this or this.
Yeah.
Example being King Kong's head. There are certain shots where I can see where they were trying to go and, like, kind of recreate the feeling of the claymation King Kong. Because his face was also a little weird. But that's just how it was so that they could get the mouth to move right.
Yeah.
So his mouth is a little weird. His tongue is a little weird. But, like, you could almost see it. And then you get the rest of the body. Well, and I think the proportions are the main problem with King Kong.
I think it's also the hair a little bit, too.
The hair doesn't help.
If it tells you how bad this costume is, they didn't use any of it in their promotional material. Instead, they used the original 1933 stop-motion King Kong stills.
Not a good look.
No.
The other main problem was they clearly wanted the long arm proportion.
Yeah.
Which is fair. I mean, he's supposed to be a gorilla, and they do have very long arms. However, gorilla arms are kind of opposite people arms if you were, like, to draw a fake, like, from your memory gorilla. Mm-hmm. You kind of want beefier bottom part of the arm, big hands, and, like, little less muscle in the bicep area.
Yeah, it's too anthropomorphized. And that was a major comment for both his and Godzilla's costume.
They're very anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
Godzilla less so, but the acting in him ended up being very... human-esque.
Yeah, and the one thing with Godzilla's costume is that this is still one of the fan favorite costumes.
The design of this Godzilla I like, because this is where we finally get no ears. So the ears are gone. We've moved from having 4 toes to 3 toes, which doesn't sound like a big change, but visually it does make him more reptilian.
Yeah.
And then we also get one bigger dorsal fin, which is something we still see.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I like his overall design. He also gets a longer tail, which,
It's fine. It was a nice change.
It was a nice change. I like his look. King Kong's look, on the other hand, didn't, like, he had people proportion legs, which I think was the main faulting point for me. If his arms had been the same, even if he had been the disgusting hairy mess he was, if his legs had been gorilla length, which are much shorter, I think maybe he would have read more ape and as less caveman.
Yeah, exactly.
He reads Yeti.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, he reads as a brown Yeti.
With a shitty Bigfoot.
He is a shitty Bigfoot.
And so King Kong saves the day. He drives the octopus out of the village and takes his much-needed reward of soma.
Yes.
And proceeds to pass out from
drinking.
Yes.
Yes.
And now that he's asleep, Sakurai and Furei decide to place him on a raft and transport him back to Japan, where Mr. Taco is waiting for them on the ship, waiting to inspect his goods.
Yes. Now, on paper, that sounds great. Then when they actually film it, you actually see the wow, this is a bad plan. Because it's a literal raft, like what a child would draw as a raft.
Yeah.
And they're towing it behind an ocean boat because they have to go over the ocean, not down the Mississippi like Tom Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's tied to the raft in a very Gulliver's Traveler sort of way.
With dynamite strapped to the end of it.
The dynamite part really, cracked me up. Because the dynamite being strapped was supposed to be their fail-safe in case something happened. We're going to blow him up.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why not just cut the cords and leave him in the ocean?
More dynamic.
Yes, but this is, I think, yes, the rest of this movie has been over the top and cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
This is the tipping point where we're still at that line of okay, it's not too bad yet. Well, it's passable, it's a little comedic, but it's still trying to be...
For me, it gets to the point where it's a little bit too much because of Mr. Taco.
Yes. If Mr. Taco was exiled.
And also the fact that they have the dynamite detonator primed.
The dynamite detonator is, for me, that pinnacle point of the teeter, where it's all right, if they had just had it on set and, briefly addressed it and moved on... I would have been okay, we're goofy, but we're still trying.
Yep.
Instead, there is a whole rigmarole over, we should blow him up, we should not blow him up, please don't blow him up, I'm gonna blow him up.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't actually blow up.
No.
Because reasons.
Yeah, and that's a little bit later. There's a couple cuts in between here because...
This is true.
First, the Japanese Self-Defense Force shows up.
Oh, yeah.
And tells them that they need to return Kong to Faroe Island by order of the government.
Which
is great, yeah.
Yeah, no, recap. This is a pharmacy company kidnapping a giant ape.
Basically an invasive species they're bringing in.
They're bringing in very much of an invasive species. He's gigantic.
All for publicity and mascot.
Yeah, they were going to have him be the mascot of their company. This is silly, put him back.
Mm-hmm. And this is also where it gets rather critical about it because they tell him it's a bad idea.
They do. They tell him this is a bad idea and he goes, no, my boss told me to.
Yeah, but it's my Kong.
Yeah, it's my Kong. No dumbass.
And at this time, we cut back to because they're told that Godzilla is there too, so they're having to worry about him. And he's come ashore and is attacking the countryside while the Japanese self-defense force tries to hold him back.
Yes,
which I get it, reestablishing him as this dominant creature. He's been away for 7 years.
Yes.
But the last time, all this stuff they tried before didn't work.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, pretty much after Godzilla leaves the iceberg, even once he's managed to hit land in Japan and is causing terror and chaos and people should definitely be evacuating, no one really cares.
Yeah.
Because, we've already done this rigmarole. We already kind of know, we know that the humans can't do anything. And, that's one thing for a monster movie where the two monsters are supposed to fight. That's one aspect that you're going to have to address.
Well,
that's always going to be a problem. However, they kind of leave Godzilla alone in Japan for a little bit longer than anyone
cares.
Okay.
Here's what I will say as a positive for that scene.
Yes.
For us who are Godzilla veterans.
Yes.
We're so established with that, it's duh. But, again, this is the rebirth of this series after a 7-year hiatus.
Fair.
And it's now marketed more towards children.
Who probably didn't see the originals.
Exactly.
Okay. If you're going to look at it that way, it is fair. I would say it's still boring.
It still feels pointless. There's explosions, but it's fine.
Yeah.
And at this time, Fumiko is reunited with Fujita after hearing of the attack. But because the attack happens on the boat location, or where his boat was supposed to land, because he's out, he was part of the expedition to go see what was happening with the iceberg.
Yes.
But he got off earlier and is now there. At this point, this is where we actually have kind of the first nod of the series being marketed more towards children, where a woman and her child are fleeing the city because they don't want to be in Tokyo,
which is a good life choice, really.
Yeah, because Godzilla's heading that way.
Yeah.
But the kid says, "I want to see Godzilla." Clearly a nod that, hey, this is going to be more for children. And so after this heartwarming reunion, Kong is awakened on the ship.
Yeah, because that wasn't going to be a possibility.
Nope.
Yeah. And so this is the part where earlier I was talking about there's a whole rigmarole with we should kill it, we should blow it up. This is, for me, the absolute tipping point. Like, this whole rigmarole nonsense scene, it's goofy, it's silly, and it ends the exact way you think it. Like, it ends like a kid's cartoon. Yeah,
they press or Mr. Taco accidentally presses the
it's the accidentally
dynamite
part that really gets me. Because if it had been one of the people who wanted to kill Kong on purpose and did it, that would have been a different narrative.
Yeah, and none of the crew is holding him back. It's just a battle between these three guys.
Yeah, he accidentally pushes the lever himself, which he doesn't want to do. Oh, but joy, it didn't work. It feels like a kid's cartoon, and that's kind of where I have issue. I don't mind having humor in a serious film.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think there's definitely a market for that.
It just doesn't fit.
This is the first part where you're like, whoa, hold on. We were just doing humor. Now we're doing slapstick?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the major criticisms of this movie is it's rather slapstick in its comedy.
And if it had been slapstick the whole way through, that might have been a different critique. But this is we're quite a ways into the movie and this is the first slapstick we're getting.
Yeah.
It feels jarring.
Yeah. And also, King Kong has escaped, which even with the dynamite, he still stands up in the water.
This is the part where my husband about lost his mind, because we can assume we are out at ocean. Like, we are not near any land whatsoever. We're not even, near a harbor. And King Kong just kind of rolls off it and stands up, and it's, not even up to his nipples.
Nope.
How tall is this dude?
I'll get into that in a minute.
He's got, rubber legs and can just touch the bottom of the ocean?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
I hate it.
And so, at this time as well, we cut back more to Godzilla stuff.
Who's still stomping around.
Stomping around the neighborhood because Fumiko's going to get her brother at the town.
Yeah.
Or at the harbor or whatever.
I don't know. She's going to go save her bro.
Yeah, and Godzilla crushes on the train that she's on.
Yeah.
It's a forgettable scene. It's not great for the rest of the story.
Especially since the rest of it, like we said, turns really slapsticky. We went from slapstick humor with slapstick ending to kind of more traditional Godzilla. It's a lot more stompy. We're focused back on the damsel in distress, worrying about family, and this is real life consequences, where just a second ago, Kong was treading so hard he was floating. It feels insignificant because we've changed tone already.
Yeah.
So this scene, while I like it, and if it had been in a different Godzilla King Kong movie, I probably would have really enjoyed it, because this does feel emotional. Yeah,
it would have been. It would have just been it would have been a Godzilla film. It wouldn't have been, because that's honestly where the kind of why it's probably so jarring is because the Godzilla parts are so serious.
Yes.
And the King Kong parts are so comedic.
Yes, very much so. But they don't feel like they're balancing each other like we've seen some movies do that, where there's a comedic character who's balancing out the strong stoic character. It just feels poorly written.
Yeah, it doesn't mesh well.
It doesn't mesh well, which kind of makes me sad, because I went back and rewatched this specific scene, because my friend had made a comment about it and not understanding what was going on, because she watched the American version.
Yeah.
And so I went back and rewatched it, and the scene by itself is fine. The scene works fine, the acting's good, the writing makes sense, at least in the Japanese version, and you just don't care, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of there. Again,
it would have been more important if this had been a Godzilla film.
Exactly. And so finally, our first clash, or
our first encounter.
More of a sizing up, showing who's got the bigger power.
It's silly. It's so silly.
The eighth wonder of the world meets the king of all monsters.
Which this could have been such an epic scene.
But I also kind of like it too because...
Yeah, I don't hate it.
From the time era that Godzilla was originally from, he's never seen an ape.
Yes.
So it's them kind of testing it because Kong has never seen a Godzilla.
The scene logically makes sense. I think the part that's awkward is
the standstill lens leads to.
Yeah, and there are human characters who are witnessing this who could have helped narrate what possibly was going on a little better.
Yeah.
And they try to kind of, but instead they just kind of add like weird comedic slap.
Yeah, because the trio from Pacific Pharmaceuticals show up. The government's trying to dictate what's going on, but he's like, I'm the ambassador, Kong's mine. But they're sitting there taking bets on who's going to win. Yeah,
where they could have potentially maybe had someone who's more of a scientist in that group trying to explain like, oh, they're sizing each other up, they don't know who could win this fight. That would have helped explain it, especially since, again, this was supposed to be for kids and maybe less Godzilla-thoughted persons. I think the general audience who saw this saw Godzilla once at best and remembered it as a good time in a Godzilla flick, and they didn't spend time thinking about the composition of Godzilla.
Well, okay, so I kind of want to get into some more of the features for this as well.
Yeah.
For starters, when I first saw this scene again, I thought of, I have the high ground, Anakin.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But also what makes this a little bit jarring too is, like we've mentioned before, how anthropomorphized both the creatures are.
Yeah.
Also their actions, both the actors for King Kong and Godzilla tried incorporating as much professional wrestling as they could borrow, because at the time it was called a Puro Resu.
Yes. Pro wrestle.
Had a huge boom at the time. So, of course, to them, it made sense to, okay, we're going to mash these two cultural icons, or these now three cultural icons together.
And to be honest, even the American audience would have been familiar, and wrestling was popular at the time, especially this kind of wrestling.
Yeah.
The thing that was kind of weird was we weren't initially set up for this.
No, exactly.
Because we've already seen Godzilla fight. Kind of. I mean, he fought nothing.
We're looking for them to duke it out.
And I think when you first go into this movie, especially if you've never seen any of the stills from it or a clip from it, you assume that it's going to be an ape-style attack versus a Godzilla-style attack, and who would win.
Instead of Godzilla throwing rocks and...
Not even throwing, he kicks a rock at one point.
King Kong throwing rocks, and Godzilla is shooting him with his atomic breath.
Yeah, which the atomic breath, like the original Godzilla part of this fight, doesn't feel too bad. King Kong definitely comes off the worst at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because he kind of immediately goes into that set, and unfortunately, because he looks like a Yeti that's rolled in some dirt, it doesn't read as a monkey throwing a rock.
No.
It reads as a Yeti man throwing a boulder, Andre the Giant style.
It makes me think kind of that I think it's like the third episode in Star Trek where Kirk throws the rock and it bounces. There's something that's lacking in it.
Yeah, and I think another part that feels lacking in this movie, which honestly I think some of the later dumb Godzilla films do kind of address a little bit, is nothing in this movie feels heavy.
No.
Like, the rocks do not appear heavy. There doesn't appear to be any effort to lift them. They kind of bounce around the set willy-nilly. Godzilla doesn't seem to have any weight when he stomps or when his tail comes down on things.
No.
It looks like a pool noodle flopping around, which, like, I think that alone is probably the hardest part to get over, Because, yeah, it's goofy and silly, but if the rocks had looked like they weighed something,
exactly,
that could have helped quite a bit, actually. Like, yeah, he still would have looked like a hairy man wrestling a lizard human.
Yeah.
But at least the rock's heavy. At least the stomps feel real. At least the punches feel forceful. Instead, it just kind of feels like two kids fighting in a pool.
That actually will be something to bring up in our next episode.
True.
So, another side little thing. The original King Kong is 50 feet. And they had to scale him up to Godzilla's 164 feet.
Which...
I think maybe that's part of it too, because Godzilla is so alien to us, but King Kong is a bit more.
Yeah, like we know how big a gorilla should be.
Yeah.
And then we also know how big a big gorilla is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, the original King Kong is bigger, but we're given a very clear scale of him. And he doesn't really change size too much in the movie. They did a very good job of making him consistent. So, like, we have a very accurate idea of what he should be, and then he didn't match, so we changed him.
Yep.
But we didn't spend time reevaluating that size comparison.
Exactly.
So we don't get a scene where he's holding a person for extended periods of time. We don't get him next to humans or buildings or cars. He's just on a raft behind a boat, and then he stands up in the ocean.
Exactly.
This guy has... he's got One Piece logic.
Yep. So, after their big sizing up, the Godzilla, King Kong just...
kind of leaves.
Yeah, just wanders off. Godzilla lets him do his thing. And we cut to the Japanese self-defense forces' next plan to...
I love their next plan.
They plan to dig a pit, fill it with poison gas and explosives in an attempt that would make Jesse and James of Team Rocket proud.
But actually, and I like that they dig a pit and then put stuff on top of the pit so that he'll step on the pit and fall in the pit. Like, this is an elaborate child-sized plan. And
I also like it too. One, because
it is.
It's probably the first really comedic approach to King or Godzilla at this point.
But honestly, like, it's not the worst plan for Godzilla we've ever heard of.
No.
Because at least he'd be in a pit.
Yeah.
He'd at least be contained. We don't know if he can dig or not.
We don't know if he can live through this poison or all these explosives.
We have no idea if the thing can even jump. As far as we know, he can't. So, like, yeah, put him in a pit. At least he'll be in there.
Yep. I will say, even though it's superimposed.
Yeah, it's very...
The fire in this scenes... better than Baywatch.
Better than Baywatch's, yeah.
That is my new standard of shitty fire is better than Baywatch.
That's fair. That is a fair judgment call. Yeah, no. We did see some special effects come back from the original Godzilla film. Specifically, like the use of small tanks and buildings and scale models to help portray how big this is supposed to be without actually having to get in a helicopter.
Yeah.
And all of those, granted, there's a couple of scenes where it's very much a toy. The train specifically looks toy-esque.
Yeah.
The tanks, not so much. I think the tanks are fine. They're old. It's old-timey, but, like...
it works.
But it works. It works. You don't watch this movie expecting the latest technology and special effects. You watch it to have a good time and to be somewhat immersed in the world. And I think, at this point, most of the special effects we've seen, minus Godzilla and King Kong encounter, the special effects so far have been good.
Mm-hmm. Well... yeah, I mean, they're of their time. They're
of their time.
They're of the Suitmation era.
Yeah, and honestly, like, they're not jarring enough to bring you out of the movie. Like, you know what you're going into, you know what to expect, and that's what you got, and that's fine.
Yeah, and so what do they decide to do now? The exact thing they should have done from the get-go.
Yes.
They set up high power lines around Tokyo to deter Godzilla.
Yeah, because, by the way, in this film, Godzilla's weakness is electricity.
Well, in the earlier ones, it was, too.
He walks through a power line in the first one.
He melts them.
That's, okay, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie really established two tropes. One, Godzilla's weakness to electricity, and King Kong's powering by electricity.
Yeah.
Kind of like Frankenstein.
Yeah, no. And to be honest with you, as far as my research showed, the whole King Kong getting powered up by electricity, as far as I can see, it's a leftover of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Which if you didn't know that Frankenstein was supposed to be in this movie, it would just be another weird thing in this movie. Now that you know, it all makes sense and it's fine.
Yeah, it would be a way to more establish, because at this time, Godzilla has no weaknesses. Yeah. And King Kong's weakness is berry juice. So now we have to give King Kong something that gives him an advantage.
Yeah, and...
It makes them rivals, kind of.
Yeah, and because they made this film in hopes of making a franchise for children, you can't have a Godzilla with no weaknesses or power. Yeah. You have to have a balanced character, otherwise you don't have very many episodes, do you? Nope. Yeah, so, like, it's silly, and if you were a really big fan of the original Godzilla, it will feel wrong, but if you go into it knowing that this leads to Mechagodzilla, it's fine.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it balances out later on in a different movie.
Yeah, we'll go through that. So, at this point, King Kong has now powered up. Yes. He is stomping his way into the heart of Tokyo.
Just making a racket.
People are evacuating.
You know, I will appreciate that while this movie is dumb and silly, they at least took some things seriously detail-wise. And I appreciate evacuating your citizens.
But also I appreciate this part because it is very much a reference to the original King Kong.
Oh, for sure.
Him stopping the subway train, or stopping the...
It's a train.
Trains. Yeah. And staring into the window, taking Fumiko out.
Yeah, no, it's very much a, hey, remember that time?
Yeah.
Scene? But...
it's a nice nod that fits, because instead of Godzilla being the enemy number one at this point, it's King Kong.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, this is probably one of the better looking scenes for King Kong. Mm-hmm. Like, this part feels okay. This scene feels fine, and the train scene all flows logically. There's not a moment where you're like, wow, why didn't you all leave? Like, it all works just fine.
And one thing that's great about this scene, it mirrors original King Kong.
Of course.
The Japanese Defense Force is going to blow Kong out of the sky, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're going to try.
And then the brother shows up saying, hey, don't do that. My sister's there.
Which, not going to put words in a military's mouth, but I don't think that stopped them before.
We'll save that for another time.
But in this movie, especially a kid's movie, it is a good enough reason for them to not blow Kong out of the sky the second they can.
It makes sense. And then they realize, oh, wait, if we vaporize the berry juice, we can knock him out.
Yes, which effectively turns Kong into one of those hippie foodies, because this is a thing that you can pay money to do, is have your food or flavors vaporized, and then you can drink them delightfully. My favorite one I've heard of is whiskey. You can have whiskey vaporized, and then you can drink the little whiskey cloud.
In the words of Ron Swanson, this is a wrong way to consume alcohol.
I mean, yes, spoken from the true man who made a burger. Eat it.
Yeah. And so, they get those missiles together hella fast.
Oh, man. I'm impressed.
Knock King Kong out, and actually ties back into earlier in the film.
Yeah, I liked this part.
Where, what's his name? The boyfriend is hanging from the strings. They're like, well, we don't have any way to transport him. He's like, well, I've got this wire.
Yeah.
Here, let's test it out.
Yeah, which, it feels dumb, but it is a fun gadget. It's a kid's film that's kind of, it doesn't have a trope yet, because we don't have a whole lot of kid monster films yet. No. To go off of, so why not have a cool gadget in there too?
And, we are gearing up for the big fight. Now, I can see in an American audience why they cut a little bit of this scene out. Because they cut out a lot of them prepping the balloons, getting them ready, tying King Kong to it.
It isn't 1960s American movie pace.
No.
It's a little bit slower than that, especially if it was targeted at American kids.
Yeah. And so they lift the passed out ape, and they start carrying him to Mount Fuji, where Godzilla is climbing it, and they decide to Dumbo drop him onto Godzilla.
You just let him go.
Drop that hungover ape.
nothing bad will possibly happen.
No.
And by that I mean King Kong just kind of slides down Mount Fuji on his butt.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
He rolls into them,
Yes.
knocks them down, and then the real fight ensues.
Yeah.
Where it starts off with Godzilla overpowering Kong, partly because of Kong dodge rolling himself into unconsciousness.
Yeah, no, he straight up just smacks his face onto the mountainside, so
yeah.
I feel like this is fair.
Well, yeah.
Not fair as in, like, the battle's fair, but, like, it's fair to make sense that King Kong is, doesn't know where the frick he is, because last he checked, he was looking at a train.
Yeah. Well, and we also get to see a little bit of King Kong's, intelligence. Let's call it intelligence,
because that was supposed to be the original trope of King Kong, was that he was supposed to be smarter than Godzilla, because Godzilla was supposed to be all instinct and animalistic, and King Kong was closer to a man, where he had more thought power.
Which they do give a little bit more in the American version for that.
It's mostly in dialogue, let's be real.
Yeah. And so, at one point in the battle, actually right after the Dumbo drop, King Kong runs up the hill and hides behind a ridge and tries grabbing Godzilla's tail as he walks by.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much this whole battle is absolute chaos.
Pururesu.
It is Pururesu, very much. But, yeah, no, it is very silly. There's a scene where one tries to jam a tree down the other one's throat.
That is my favorite part. King Kong tries shoving well, it happens later on. It happens a little later on once, it looks like King Kong's gonna die because he's knocked himself out.
Yeah.
Godzilla's kicking rocks onto him, smacking him with his tail.
It very much follows the exact trope that every old-timey wrestling show did, where, oh, this is our hero, he's beat down, there's no way. It's anime. This is anime plot.
Cue random lightning scene.
Power of friendship will heal King Kong.
Yeah, we can get into other kaiju films with that bullshit too.
But this fight scene is exactly what you think you're gonna get. And if you know that, and honestly, if this had been a different part of a different movie, it would have been hilarious and fun. Yeah. It's just awkwardly tied to a serious beginning, so... I love this scene, don't get me wrong. I do too. I love this scene.
Just tying it into the rest of the movie is a bit awkward. Because, I love... Okay, that is my favorite part of that movie, is that tree scene. Because you can clearly see him
shoving it down the back of his throat.
Shove it into the throat, and the plastic tree bends because the costume can't go any further.
Yes. No, this is absolutely ridiculous. We love this fight scene. We send each other, like, probably once a week, different scenes from this fight scene. It is delightful and stupid and funny, and we love it.
Eat your vegetables, bitch.
It's just not supposed to be part of this movie.
Yeah. And so the fight resumes. They eventually start fighting over Atami Castle.
Yeah, which feels odd because... Okay, so this is the part where it feels the most odd, because to a Japanese audience, they know what that is.
Yeah.
And they know how historically important that is. It's the Japanese equivalent of King Kong on the Empire State Building. But the American audience doesn't know what that is.
And my written notes is, that ball looks like the one from Spirited Away.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's kind of my one...
Again, it's a weird little cultural gap that we don't have.
Yeah, and again, we heavily edited this movie for the American audience, so why didn't we put in oh my gosh, that's such and such castle, that's so 1,000 years...
Or gave it some importance.
Yeah, like, you don't have to give me a whole synopsis on it, but, like, give me enough that I can Google it later.
Yeah.
Or, like, back in the day, go down to the library and look it up. But, like, they don't say anything about this building. Nope. It's just a beautiful building that's destroyed. It could have been my grandma's house for all I know.
Yep. And so from this, Godzilla and King Kong plunge. That's the word. Plunge into the Pacific together.
Roll off a cliff.
Small underwater skirmish. And King Kong is seen swimming back to his island while Godzilla's fate is in question.
Yes. Dun dun dun.
Yeah, and that's how the movie ends.
Which, honestly, I don't hate the ending.
No.
Like, the ending, if the battle had been a different battle, I would have been very happy with the ending.
Yeah. So, I actually have a question for you about the ending.
Yeah.
Who really won the fight?
Okay, so that's part of the fun of this movie, is that it's very much up to whoever watched it, and kind of up to whoever you wanted to root for.
Yeah.
However, if you are into this style of movie, this ending is not new to you.
No.
You've seen you've seen this exact ending 100 times. And so you know that in reality, nobody won.
Yeah.
Because you know Godzilla's coming back. You know King Kong's coming back.
It's like the end of a shitty horror film where, they've killed the killer.
It's
5 minutes into the credits. Vroom, vroom, vroom.
It's the Jason franchise from the third movie on all over. Yes. But, and I understand where some people come from not liking that.
Yeah.
I don't have that same feeling for some movies. I think there are definitely movies that are like, just end it. Just put me out of my misery and end it, and I'll be happy with the one movie and I will accept it. However, we knew going in that they were going to have more Godzilla movies. They knew that. They knew that they were going to get a child's audience because they were...
Okay, I'll say no, and I'll save it for the legacy portion of this episode.
They were really hoping, let's say, to have more Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought the whole gang back for this. They managed to get a hold of King Kong for this. They knew they had something that would hook certain audiences, and they started to feed it to children, which once you fed something to a child, the children audience in general, that's how you can guarantee a sequel.
Me and my brother's love for Pokemon.
Yes, Pokemon is a great example. Like, if you exclude the TV show, the first movie arguably could have stood by itself and no one would have given two shits.
Exactly.
However, it's for children, and children can't have just one thing because that's the culture world we live in. So of course it's got a bunch of them.
Collect them all.
Yeah, exactly. And there is something to say about that though. Like it sounds dumb, especially as an adult, because you've reached a point in your life where you can have just the one and you're fine. Yeah. You might want a whole bunch of them. You might like binging them like we do, but you would be okay if it was the one. However, kids don't live like that. Kids have not reached that point in their life. They're either going to watch this one movie 100 billion times, or they're going to watch the entire series 100 billion times. Yes. Wouldn't you rather not listen to the exact same movie forever?
Yeah.
So, like...
I agree.
And it's one of those things where whether or not you like it, if there's an audience for it, and if that audience is willing to pay money for it, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And so, the ending to this movie is, in your heart, what you want it to be. But in reality, it doesn't matter because it's a kid's franchise now.
Exactly. It's like the end of Titanic. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. My personal thoughts, I think it's a draw.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no clear winner. We know Godzilla can live underwater.
Yeah. He lived in an iceberg, for Christ's sake.
Exactly.
Thing's unkillable.
Before we continue, though, I do want to debunk a myth that I know was pretty common when I was younger, and then it just kind of died off for a while. Okay. There was a myth originally that there were two endings to the film, popularized by the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Oh, okay.
Where in the Japanese version, Godzilla came out on top, and in the American version, King Kong came on top.
Which, because of the heavy editing that the American version came through, I can see where that confusion came.
Yeah, or where there's a thought that
they had a different ending. Yeah. Yeah, I see where that confusion could have come from.
And part of that actually is due to the fact that up until last year, America didn't have a copy of the Japanese version.
You had to be one of those people if you wanted to see it. And let's be real, most people who watched this film weren't those people. They rented it from the library at best.
And part of that is due to Universal's ownership of King Kong vs. Godzilla and many of those other franchises where they've highly edited it. Yeah. When they were originally given the rights to King Kong vs. Godzilla, they weren't given a stipulation on how long that would last.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So they own King Kong vs. Godzilla indefinitely. Yeah. The only way I've had a copy of it is Criterion's collection of all the Showa eras. And even then, it's listed as a supplementary feature. Like they're not specifically selling the film.
No, it's a special bonus fun thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the giant box of DVDs you bought is pretty dope.
Oh, it's awesome.
Pretty dope.
I love it. Like I said, I binged that entire franchise. So some of my final thoughts of this movie are kind of going to be coming from having watched so much, I burnt myself out a little bit on King Kong.
And that is...
Or Godzilla.
And honestly, that's kind of one of the dangers of creature features and, like, Sojun era style movies is they are fun to binge, and they're easy to binge because most of them are easy to get a hold of in some capacity. It might not be the original, but you can find them just about everywhere. Some of them are free because they're so old, but they are all kind of very much the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similar themes and tropes, and with any specialized movie franchise and movie genre, I mean, that's gonna happen, and I mean, this one has dug itself into a very niche hole.
Yeah. So, the legacy of this Clash of the Titans.
One. Yes.
This film ended up becoming the most popular kaiju film of all time.
Yes.
Sold more tickets than any other Godzilla film, partially due to its success in the West and worldwide.
We like going to the movies here.
Yeah. This movie actually set the tone for the Showa era films.
Yes, it did.
Because this really set the comedic tone for everything, and it got more and more geared towards children. And
I mean, if you jump into any of the later Godzilla films, you can easily see that, and it's a different thing.
Yeah.
It feels a little different than this movie, but you can see where the two are connected easily.
Yes. And Toho immediately wanted to do a sequel, kind of like what they did with Godzilla. They wanted to run with it, like, hey, we got this thing going.
And honestly, that was a good instinct back in the day.
Yeah. The sequel was called Continuation, King Kong vs. Godzilla. And that was eventually canceled, and they wanted to do another film regardless, so their next project, which would also inspire the return of the Godzilla franchise altogether. They wanted to pit a creature against something famous against King Kong, against Godzilla. And so they decided to do a film entitled, and I will butcher this because if you have pointed out, anytime I try doing any other foreign language, it sounds very German.
It's okay. Do your best.
Frankenstein. Yeah. It's the SH.
Yes.
Tai Gojira. Which was rejected in favor of the Intro Company crossover film Godzilla vs. Mothra, which brought the Showa era into full swing. And so, not only did it reignite the franchise, but it also kind of led to the downfall of it too, because it became so comedic. Godzilla went on to have almost a yearly release. A yearly release until 1975 with the release of Terror of Mechagodzilla.
I mean, they fully leaned into the kid, funny, humorous theme.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, it did eventually lead down to the downfall, because, like we've said, it's easy to burn out on these. Even as kids. Like, there is only so many before you as a kid have grown out of them. But at the same time, this film did do something even more long-term than that. It planted the idea in people's heads of what ifs. And the what if that this planted was, well, we know, like, it. As a kid, you saw this and you were like, okay, that was silly. And then as an adult, you have the Batman versus Superman argument. And for some of us, it was, what if Kong and Godzilla were, like, their peak versions?
Yeah.
Not these two. What if it was the peak ones? And now that those people who have been sitting there mulling about that as high school students are adults who can make their own movies, we're seeing a resurgence of this.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the resurgence with superhero movies.
Yeah. And so, and granted, as weird as it is, this style of movie, the giant monster style of movie, it has been around a long time. However, I would argue that while it's been around a long time, it has not been refined a whole lot. We've kind of find a style that we like, and we make a ton of that one style without really changing anything up about it, which is fine to some extent, but that kind of means that Godzilla and Kong, especially Kong, unfortunately, haven't had time to polish themselves up in the same way that some other genres have had time to do.
Like Godzilla, who's gone through 3 or 4 iterations since this film.
Exactly.
And there have been other King Kong films, but they've been few and far between compared to kaiju films in general.
And King Kong still suffers from... And I shouldn't say suffer, because it's not a bad thing. But the original King Kong film, even if you haven't seen it, made such an impression culturally on the world that it's really hard to distance yourself from that Kong.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to be. So, like, we've seen the new Kongs movies. They still have remnants of the original.
Disclaimer, the only actual King Kong movie I've seen is the original King Kong.
Fair. I've seen them all. I love them.
I figured you like shitty movies.
I do, and some of my favorite actors are in the Kong films. But they were trying to do the same thing Godzilla was doing with making him more. Giving him more backstory, giving him... Which, honestly, Kong already had a really crucial backstory. But Kong, that first movie, was such an iconic piece and was so ingrained into us as a culture, even if you didn't watch it, even if you only saw the movie poster of it.
Yeah, we all know the iconic scenes from Kong of him hanging off the Empire State Building. Yeah,
we've all seen at least shots of the movie. We've all seen the movie poster 100 times. And so New Kong hasn't had as much time to find his footing as Godzilla has. And both of them haven't had a ton of time to actually find real change. Because we've seen Godzilla redone a couple times.
Well, I think part of that is due to, one, the Showa era, because the Showa era started, like, at one part it did dip its toe back into having some seriousness and, like, some politicalness to it. And the Versus series, I know, starts digging into that. And then we had Shin Godzilla, which, as I mentioned previously, is about the political ineffectiveness of the government and crisis. Which, actually, Shin Godzilla is a good one to watch now, too.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I don't think King Kong has ever had a movie like that. I know there's a lot of people who interpret the original King Kong film as an allegory for the transatlantic slave trade. Which, even though...
I mean, the director and the writer have both said no, that's not what it is. However, that's kind of the power of the original King Kong and the original Godzilla. Mm-hmm. The original Godzilla was actively trying to make that connection, and the original Kong, if you write a story that's detailed enough and well-rounded enough and thought through enough, people can make connections to anything.
Exactly.
However,
as I do with a bunch of other stupid movies.
Everyone does that. Like, that's kind of the whole cornerstone of movies. Like, a good movie makes you think, even if it's not about the thing the director thought you were going to think about.
Exactly.
Which is fine, but it does kind of lend itself to somewhat of a downfall for this style movie, the Versus style movie, because that's kind of, I think, the whole reason people are even remotely interested in seeing the new one, is because we've seen Godzilla, we've seen him scale up and up and up, and his story develop more and more, and him becoming more and more of a powerhouse and a symbol, and him having that resurgence of his original form where he meant something and he stood for all of these other problems in the world that people were experiencing. And Kong's kind of sort of gotten to have a little bit of that, but people are still...
He's still just an icon almost at this point.
Yeah, and to be honest, the Godzilla films did a lot better than the Kong films. They also stuck with people a lot more because while Kong was good, and honestly I think the writing was about on par with each other, Godzilla had scenes from it that people remember better.
Yeah.
Kong, so I think the only reason anyone's interested in seeing the new one is because we don't know how they'll be able to fight each other. Because they can't fight in the same way that this movie did it.
And I'll get to that in just a little bit. There's some other little tidbits I want to go on about the legacy of this.
Sure.
Before we give any final thoughts. At the same time of rebooting the Godzilla franchise, Toho wanted to create their own franchise around King Kong, but RKO refused. The first of two, and this was the first of two Kong films to be produced by Toho. The second one being King Kong Escapes, but it's based off a Rankin Bass Productions Saturday morning cartoon series. But at the same, it's related to that show and not King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
That being said, it introduced the first mechanized kaiju with Mechanicon.
Oh, Mechanicon.
Which would eventually lead into Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, which, there's an entirely different world now for that style of monster.
Yep. And King Kong himself would not make another film appearance until 1967.
Which, honestly, I think is part of the reason why Godzilla has more of a foothold than Kong does.
Little side bit of trivia about the octopus that I forgot to bring up in the
the poor octopus
beginning. The creature of the giant octopus would actually appear in a alternate cut or alternate end to the film Frankenstein versus Baragon, also known as Frankenstein Conquers the World.
Yeah.
But it would ultimately make another appearance in the War of the Gargantuans. It also apparently served as reference for the Kraken for Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest.
Which is probably the one everyone else remembers seeing.
Yes.
Yeah.
As well as with this version of the Godzilla suit. Even though this was the only film it was in, with some cuts in other films referencing back to this one, it was the basis for the line of 60s toys, as well as the 1963 King Kong board game that was released the same time as the movie.
Yeah, and honestly, this is the Godzilla that I think most people remember, unless they are specifically remembering a specific Godzilla. This is kind of the look everyone remembers.
Exactly. And for me personally, I feel if this movie had not been made, we might not have seen a resurgence in the 70s with Jaws and other creature features.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Because, Jaws was released over a decade later, but...
Yeah,
You can see the ties there.
Yeah.
Same with, Alien and Xenomorphs, a resurgence of sci-fi.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some concrete work that, whether or not this movie's good, it did lay down some foundations. Whether or not people are like, I took inspiration from this movie, probably not. But people saw it. Yeah. Lots of people saw it, and that sort of stuff sticks with you, and... Yeah,
it inspired Spielberg to
do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, is this movie good? No, but yeah, I can see the ties to a lot of stuff, and yeah, despite most people probably not having seen it recently, or probably a whole couple generations of people not having seen it, when you watch it, especially if you've never seen it before, you can see where some stuff comes from. You can see the ties, you can see the reminders of different tropes here or there all the way through. Exactly.
And so back to your little thought of what's going to happen in the new one.
I have questions.
So as we've mentioned, Godzilla has been increasing in size. He's currently 393 feet tall.
He is the tallest he ever been.
And King Kong in the last appearance was 104 foot, but apparently in recent trailer footage, I have not watched it because, one, I hate trailers.
Yeah.
But he might be a little bit bigger.
I've seen the new trailers. It's hard to tell because the trailers are currently very action trailer style. So you don't, he doesn't stand next to a ruler, which not helpful. But so yeah, he might be a little taller. However, I think, and I'm hoping that, and I think a lot of people are thinking that this is either going to be down to some weird trope that they bring in.
Or some gimmick.
Or we will finally get them playing back to the original concept of Kong where he was supposed to be smarter than Godzilla. Yeah. Which would be fun. I would be okay with, honestly, I'd be okay with either one. Yeah. I'm not going into this new movie expecting anything.
No, exactly. So, same with going into the last Godzilla movie.
Yeah, exactly. I understand people who love this franchise and are hoping for the sky. However, I think Godzilla and King Kong, and especially versus monster movies, you gotta go in with the bare minimum expectation, because then you're gonna have the most fun. Yeah. Because if you go into this movie, no expectation, you're not trying to learn anything, you're not trying to understand the meaning of Godzilla.
Yeah, you're not...
This movie's fun!
Yeah, you're not trying to understand it from, like, a historical context or a cultural context like we are.
And even if you are only able to get a hold of the American version, like, it's still a funny movie.
Yeah, the key fights are there.
The key fights are there. The key characters are still there. Like, yeah, a couple people's personalities have been edited to make them seem different. But honestly, it doesn't change anything as far as what you're there for, which is King Kong versus Godzilla. So it's still fun to watch.
Yeah. In the end, would you really recommend this movie?
Not to everyone. This isn't an everyone movie. I know that, even if it is a fun movie to watch. Mm-hmm. However, if you like silly movies, if you like old-timey movies, this movie's a good time. Like, it is a fun... Yeah. It's not crazy long, so it's a fun little filler movie to watch. I do recommend it to people who like this sort of nonsense. Yeah. If you like WWE, this movie...
I can definitely see that. For me personally, I understand. I'm coming from also... You watched them all. Yeah. Yeah. I watched them all. I would say definitely watch the original Japanese cut if you can get a hold of it. Yeah. If you love the Godzilla franchise, get the Criterion Collection. It is worth it.
It is worth the money.
As a film goer, even though like the American one is super accessible right now, currently it's on Amazon.
I think it's also free on YouTube.
Okay. I wouldn't expect that because of Universal.
They... surprisingly, not very protective over this movie.
Interesting. I can't recommend the American cut, honestly. I do recommend the original Japanese cut because of its talks and its initial criticism of television companies and media in general. Sure. Again, that's a running theme of films that I love, is their criticism of established tropes and norms. Yeah. But I say watch the original cut.
If you can.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's just my honest opinion. I personally love the movie, but it's a stupid fun movie.
If you go into it knowing full damn well that this movie is nothing more than a GIF generator, then you're gonna have a good time.
Yes, exactly. So, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.